Start Summit, where we'll be talking about nurturing women entrepreneurship for SDGs with UNICEF. This panel is in partnership with UNICEF and YuWaah. To share their insights today, we have with us Ms. Dwarka Sriram, Chief of Generation Unlimited, Youth Development and Partnerships. She's also the moderator for today's panel. We have with us Ms. Sunita Sanghi, Principal Advisor, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. Ms. Pallavi Tyagi, EVP and CHRO, Capgemini. Ms. Vandana Bhatnagar, Chief Program Officer, National Skill Development Corporation. Ms. Sudeshna Mukherjee, Operations Director, Hamara Grid. And we're also joined by Ms. Moira Dawa from UNICEF Gujarat. I now invite Rahul Bhagchandani, Group CEO, GUSEC, to present his opening remarks.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all the audience who has joined us since this morning for the Her Start Summit. First of all, let me thank Dwarka Sriram and Moira Dawa from the UNICEF team to have put together this wonderful panel. I would like to welcome, on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, Gujarat University and the Gujarat University team, Ms. Sunita Sanghi, Ms. Pallavi Tyagi, Ms. Vandana Bhatnagar, and Ms. Sudeshna Mukherjee to have joined us on this platform of Her Start Summit, which is Gujarat University's flagship platform for promoting women entrepreneurs and women innovators. Gujarat University is the oldest and the largest university of the state of Gujarat, established in 1949. And Gujarat University Startup and Entrepreneurship Council, GUSEC, has been a flagship initiative of the university, promoted by the central government and the state government, established in 2016. Since when we have been able to support, incubate, and work with over 300 startups from Gujarat and beyond. I'm pleased to inform that our startups have, together in the last couple of years, created over 1,500 jobs and more than 30 crore rupees in cumulative revenue. With the support of the central government, state government, other private sector undertakings, and public sector undertakings, along with the extended support of multilateral agencies such as UNICEF, we have been able to establish multiple support systems across the entire startup ecosystem pipeline to encourage, nurture, grow, accelerate idea stage entrepreneurs, be it a school-going child or a college-going student, a professional, or anybody else who wishes to start up. Taking forward the mission and the call for action by our alumni, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, we have been able to build a robust ecosystem. The state of Gujarat, which has emerged as the #1 startup state for 2 times in a row as per the DPIIT rankings. Thanks to the recent partnerships with UNICEF and YuWaah, we have been able to build amazing platforms such as the Children Innovation Festival, which in its second right now has encouraged more than 2,500 school-going children from every state of India to participate in this innovation festival that we are conducting. Her Start is also being supported this year by UNICEF and YuWaah, and I thank the UNICEF team for their constant support. We are expecting almost 2,500 aspiring women entrepreneurs to participate in the Her Start program that is ongoing, for which we are accepting applications till March 28th. Even for this summit, we received an amazing response with close to 1,000 registrations across the day. We have seen a participation of more than 200 to 250 participations constantly across our social media platforms and this event platform. There is a wonderful panel that has been put together by Dwarka and Moira. And without further ado, I would ask Rebecca to take this program forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul. It gives me joy in introducing Ms. Dwarka Sriram, Chief of Generation Unlimited Youth Development and Partnerships. Ms. Sriram is UNICEF India Child Protection Adolescent Specialist and has nearly 17 years of experience in the field of strategic planning and programming experience with UNICEF and UNHCR in the areas of youth adolescent empowerment, skills employment, and gender and child protection. I invite her to take the panel discussion forward.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. A warm welcome to all of our esteemed panelists for this important discussion on combining gender equity and skill development objectives for SDGs. And there can't be any better day than today when we are celebrating International Women's Day. All those who are watching this live session, a very happy Women's Day. The theme for this year is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in COVID-19 World. And I must say, all the panelists who are present here are leaders and influencers in their own domain. They have challenged the status quo, broke many ceilings, and today they're leading and changing and inspiring many young girls and women to pursue their passion and dreams. The Beijing Declaration committed participating governments to encourage men to participate fully in all actions towards equality. Involving men and boys is critical, especially in education and the socialization of children, childcare and housework, sexual health, gender-based violence, and balancing of work and family responsibilities. So I thank all my panelists on behalf of UNICEF and YuWaah for giving us their time today. I would also like to congratulate the Gujarat University Startup and Entrepreneurship Council for the successful launch of the HerStart platform and organizing this summit to celebrate the achievements of women in the areas of skilling and entrepreneurship. I look forward to an insightful conversation as we begin. Now, let me introduce the exciting panelists we have today and then we'll move on to the discussion. Sunita Sanghi is the Senior Advisor in the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. She is an Indian Economic Service Officer of 1984 batch. She has been actively involved in shaping the skills development and employment landscape in India since 2008. She was involved in putting in place the coordinated action on skills development, including the National Skills Development Corporation Board while she was in the Planning Commission, and also the Prime Minister's Council on Skills Development. She has played a critical role in drafting the first national policy on skills development in 2009 and setting up of the NSDA. Next is Vandana Bhatnagar, who serves as the Chief Program Officer at the National Skills Development Corporation and has management responsibilities for the organization's funding strategy and portfolio development. She is a key member of the senior leadership team and plays an integral role in developing NSDC's business development strategies to drive skilling operations through its robust partner network. She has over 25 years of professional experience in banking, development, finance institutions, and applied research. Prior to joining NSDC, Vandana was associated with the World Bank as Senior Institutional Development Specialist, Water Department Global Practice. Next is Pallavi Tyagi. As the India Chief HRO, she drives the HR and talent strategy for Capgemini in India and serves as its representative in the global Capgemini HR leadership team. Her people-focused charter includes business, talent acquisition, learning and development, transformation and retention, talent mobility, diversity and inclusion, and organizational competitiveness. And lastly, we have Sudeshna Mukherjee, who did her master's in sociology and worked for over 20 years in international development organizations like CARE, CRS, DFID, heading inclusive planning and project executions. Sudeshna was also the Deputy Country Director of Melinda Foundation and also the Director of Operations. She has headed productive use of energy and capability in rural electrification project in Jharkhand, and a singular achievement has been to ensure that over 21% growth in personal and entrepreneur incomes year on year in 40 villages with low carbon footprint. Now, before we start, I just want to give a little bit of context before we go into the questions. I'd like to mention that according to the June 2020 World Bank report, India's female labor force participation is lowest in South Asia at 20.3%, which has dropped from 30.3% in 1990. The participation of women in Indian labor market is one of the striking features of gender inequality. The participation of women in entrepreneurship in India is even lower. It's estimated that less than 20% of enterprises in India have at least one women promoter. Achieving gender equality is integral to each of the 17 SDGs. This decline is probably not just an issue of access, but also many other barriers that girls and women face. So now, from our panelists, we will hear their perspectives and ideas on what we can do differently. With this note, my first question is for you, Sunita. You have played a key role in skilling initiatives in India, and I've been eager to listen to you. You have years of experience in skilling and women entrepreneurship. You have led efforts to change things. So, what's your take on breaking this mental barrier on girls and women getting into entrepreneurship? What is your key advice and suggestions for stakeholders in addressing the situation of gender inequality in workforce in India? Over to you, Sunita.
Thank you, Dwarka. Let me at the outset thank the Gujarat University and UNICEF for inviting me to this exciting webinar. I think the topic that you have chosen is very, very good and very important topic because, as you rightly mentioned, that India is a country where we have a falling female labor force participation rate, despite the fact that more than 48% of the total population constitute women. There are studies which indicates that if we increase the women participation by a particular percentage, the GDP of the country can go up, which essentially means that if more and more women are able to participate in the labor force, not only the GDP will go up, but also the per capita income, the standard of living will go up, because any participation by the women will have a multiplier impact on the social outcomes and the economic outcomes, both in terms of improving the family education and also the family health. Because when women enters the labor market, or when more and more women are there in the workforce, their focus changes because they become more independent, their thinking is more independent, and they focus more on education and others. The question that you have asked is, what are the barriers that are actually forcing Indian women not to be in the labor market? I will interpret it that way. Or what is it that is forcing them not to be there where they are ideally to be? Now, if they are working as an entrepreneur, definitely they will take a better decision, they will be more independent, and they will be for a longer time in the labor market. But when we look at the reasons as to what is it, we also need to necessarily look at the challenges that they are facing into the when they are entering. Maybe it is the family problems, because it is in the particular society like India, it's the men folk who actually decides what a woman is going to do. It's another thing that maybe in the urban areas, more and more women, because of the higher level of educations, they are moving away from that kind of a binding. But still in the rural area, where 70% of the women are still there, the men folk have migrated, so women are still facing that family compulsions and family problems to come out. The second, I think, important barrier that they are facing is in terms of management of finance, or maybe access to the finance, because the assets that the women are controlling, whether in the rural areas or in the urban areas, although the situation has changed over the period of time, but still more and more assets and more finances are being managed by the men folk. The third important barrier to me that they are facing is how do they manage the manpower? Because while I was working in the government also, I many a time noticed that a male employee, when he or she is reporting to a woman, or even the female employee is reporting to a women manager, they always used to feel that, okay, ye to women hai, kya karna hai? So managing manpower also becomes a little challenge when it comes to women. That is one of the barrier. Then there is a professional disrespect that they are facing in terms of that chalta attitude, okay, women hai, kya karna hai? There's another challenge that there is in terms of that they may not be having an access to the network, they may not be having the access to the latest kind of innovation, technology, or maybe the better skilling facilities. Now, these kind of barriers may vary depending upon which geographical area that you are coming from. Maybe in the urban areas, the women who are the solo entrepreneur, they may be facing it. Maybe the rural areas, the solo entrepreneur may be facing it. But those women who are in the MSME may or may not be facing these particular barriers. Now, the question that really arises is, has government done anything to do this? Yes, government has taken multiple initiatives to address these challenges and to ensure that more and more women actually enter the labor market, whether through the self-employment, that is an entrepreneurship route, or maybe through the wage employment. Since you have already indicated that when it comes to India, just about 20% of the enterprises are owned by the women, which is as per the latest survey, then the question that arises is, what is it that can be done really to improve upon the situation and that more and more women can enter the entrepreneurship? Because if women are entrepreneurs, there are four important things that really happens. One, there is natural growth in the economy because women are contributing, and when you're 50% of your population, a percentage of 50% of the population also start contributing in the economic development, your GDP definitely goes up. At the same time, women also contribute in creation of employment because it is being seen, and see a lot of studies which indicate that any women enterprise tend to employ more and more women. So you will definitely see an increase in the employment of the more and more women. Given also the fact that women are multitasking, their ability to take a decision and take the risk, which I personally feel is much higher than compared to the other sex. So these are the couple of reasons which are very important. But what can be done? I think we need to create better educational opportunities for women. Because what happens is that many times we explore and say that women are withdrawing from the labor market because they're entering the education space. That has not happened. It's not because they are in the education space, that's why they are not in the labor market. Perhaps the right kind of equal opportunities are not available there in the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. So if we are able to create better educational opportunities and we are also able to make provisions for personality development and training, I think more and more women will definitely enter into the entrepreneurship space. At the same time, it is also very important to improve the communication skills, and we also have to have an institutions where women can learn the entrepreneurial skills and they can also take learn about the risk-taking abilities. It is also necessary to have the measures to change the attitude of society concerning the women and women entrepreneurs in India. And I think the attempts from the non-governmental bodies and agencies, trust, they also need to be aligned with the government policies. And I personally feel that more women's association could be brought on board for better financing and capital management. I think the bank like Mandeshi, which is specifically focusing on providing financial assistance to women entrepreneurs, are required. And then providing nationwide platform for women, like forums to discuss prevalent issues and solutions to deal with such shortcomings is very, very important. And another important thing which I feel is that while government has been making a number of programs and policies to promote entrepreneurship in general, and also making available financing and marketing facilities, I think we are somewhere down the line, there is lack of advocacy. Because a couple of days back, I was in one of the webinar wherein a number of women entrepreneurs were there. I mean, they were not even aware of the fact that there is a Mudra program, which is a collateral-free program. So that speaks of itself that we need to ensure that more and more advocacy workshops are held and more awareness generation programs are held so that women actually understand and know that what is it that are available in the ecosystem that they can take advantage of. And we have to necessarily ensure that the gender stereotyping, which is prevalent in the society, that needs to be broken, and that can be easily broken. I'll just give you one example. I think that is from the Disha program, wherein in the state of Haryana, when they started training women in a job roles, the steel plant, nobody ever thought about. I was reading recently, many of the women there have started their own small ancillary unit in the villages, which is a small enterprise to support the big. So which essentially mean that if you're able to provide and break that ceiling and then give it to the women that yes, you can do it, and you make available not only the finance, you make available the network, you make available the mentor support, definitely women will break the shackle and they will be a successful entrepreneur. And the last thing that I would like to just indicate is that the entire ecosystem will have to come together to move the needle, and the government has to play a very, very critical role. And it is necessary, whether it is a banking system, it's an investing community, or it is a SHGs, it's the NGOs, it's a private sector. Everybody will have to come together to ensure that women as a change maker, women as an entrepreneur actually succeed, and we are able to bring about equity and equality and able to achieve the very objective and goal of the SDG to achieve women empowerment through women equality. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sunita. You have given a lot of pertinent points on the issue. We all have to collectively work together to address it, as you have rightly pointed out. So moving on, Vandana, we're really excited to be collaborating with NSDC. What are some of the challenges you think girls and women face that could be contributing to reducing their participation in workforce and entrepreneurship opportunities? How is NSDC looking to inspire more women to train, get jobs, or become entrepreneurs?
Thanks, Dwarka, and it's a pleasure to be on this panel, and congratulations on the collaboration with GUSEC. I think it's a great one, and we are happy to be associated with the program as well, with Generation. I think, Sunita has touched upon very important points on what are some of the key barriers which are contributing to this problem of low participation of women in the workforce, and more specifically in entrepreneurship. And I think just to augment on that, the way we see it, there are certain positive factors which are things which happen across the normal development trajectory of most countries. As the income levels rise in a lot of countries, you do see a decline in the initial stages of women from the workforce. They may choose to opt out of work which was earlier seen to be done out of compulsion and prioritize other aspects of their lives. But as development moves further, they typically come back into the workforce, and by that time the economy typically offers more options for work which are suited to women, whether it's in the service sector or in some of the more advanced manufacturing kind of roles. And in a lot of countries, whether it's China, Korea, Taiwan, and more recently in Bangladesh, the export-driven industries have often contributed to providing a lot of very structured work opportunities for women. In India's case, somehow we've still got a situation where about 90% of the work is informal in character. And the conditions of work can be fairly adverse, more so for women in many cases. So while opportunities are rising in the service sector and often also in the white collar segment, often it might not keep pace with the numbers which are joining the workforce. So I think if there is a choice, then women who are now better educated, they're waiting for suitable opportunities, as Sunita also mentioned, before they really prefer to join. But then, of course, there's also the whole issue, which is the negative side of our region in particular, is the issue of social norms and stereotyping, women into certain roles. And as per the PLFS data, if we see out of the about 30 crore women who are not in the labor force in the working age group, about 60% of them report primary activity as attending to domestic duties. So clearly, we know that this is where a lot of our social construct exists. And what we say is that we need to enable and make it possible for women to connect into training activities, skilling activities, and thereafter to work while realizing the social context that they are operating in. And another part which is often a deterrent is safety, whether it's safety in terms of reaching a workplace, or in our country, there's a lot of work which requires migration, in which case accommodation facilities which are suited for working women are not often available. So if we look at what's going on in our training ecosystem at NSDC, which as many of you might be aware is a public-private partnership, and we kind of perform two kinds of roles. On the one hand, we are working as an implementing agency for the government for many of their programs, And on the other side, we have a training partner ecosystem who also run a large number of programs which are driven by the market. It could be based on what candidates might pay or corporates might pay. So if I were to focus first on what is being done under the programs which are funded by the government, there is a lot that is being provided for in these programs to encourage women to participate. And the top line is, if you see the overall training numbers, we have an equal number of women in our training programs under PMKVY, which is the flagship national program of the Ministry of Skill Development. Equal number of women enroll as the men. And in our analysis, we've done a fair amount of analysis from a gender lens. The completion rates are higher, the dropout rates are lower, the certification rates are higher for women, the placement rates are higher for women. So it's all good news, really, if you look at it from the programmatic point of view. But finally, the wage levels are typically lower for women compared to men. And that's something which definitely needs to be addressed. It's about 10% overall in our ecosystem, but it varies across sectors. But the interesting thing is that out of the women who've gone through short-term trainings, the ones who are placed finally, 20% of them are choosing to opt for self-employment, as compared to 9% for the male candidates. So we find that there's a much larger share of our trained women candidates who are going in for roles which lead them into self-employment or small entrepreneurial businesses. So I think that it displays a natural inclination to give that track a shot, partly because also it provides a certain flexibility to them, which is conducive to their social realities. The other thing which is being provided for, of course, are dedicated training centers. We have 33 of them. And of course, even in our regular training centers, there is provision under the scheme for boarding, lodging facilities, reimbursement of transportation costs for those people who are coming from a certain distance. And the idea in many of them, there's also creche facilities being provided for women who might be coming into training centers after becoming mothers. And that's really to reduce the barriers which might be there for women to come into the skilling ecosystem. But more specifically on entrepreneurship, one of the things that we had done, as Sunita also mentioned, through the Mudra program, we do have also through our Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendras, which are model training centers, about 700 of them across the country. Pretty much all districts are covered. So through these PMKKs, wherever there are job roles where training is leading to entrepreneurship, there is also an interface through what is called an Udyami Mitra portal, through which people can apply for the Mudra loan. And the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendra acts like a hand-holding agency. They have also a dedicated entrepreneurship cell in a lot of them, so that they can provide some support and provide putting up those applications for funding or providing some hand-holding support. The other thing is also in all our training programs now, the move towards, initially it was done for 9 and gradually it's being incorporated in almost all programs, is a module which is focusing on English employability and entrepreneurship skills. So this is becoming like an adjunct to a lot of the regular skill training that happens. And the entrepreneurship skills is a necessary module as part of this. So I think these are really trying to encourage a lot of the trainees to move and explore the world of entrepreneurship on their in their environment. So that was really under the government program. And just to give a quick idea of the kind of things that are happening on the market-based kind of program and our training partner ecosystem, as Sunita also mentioned, the Mandeshi Foundation is one of our training partners who were one of the first cooperative banks for women in rural India. And they've trained over 1 lakh women and connected them to self-employment opportunities. And a similar kind of intervention is there by the Shri Mahila Seva Sehkari Bank, the Madura Micro Education Private Limited. All these are NSDC training partners. And organizations like the Industry Skill Foundation, which has a skilling arm, are providing also entrepreneurship models which are around producer companies. And a lot of women are transformation that's happening. We've also entered into very interesting tie-ups with a couple of corporates. Britannia was one of the interesting partnerships we entered into last year, where they launched a startup initiative for homemakers. And essentially, they were providing, inviting homemakers to put up their ideas for entrepreneurship, and they were funding a select set of ideas. And about 10,000 homemakers were provided online training opportunities for entrepreneurship skills. And similar is being done with Microsoft, where we have recently entered into a tie-up for providing digital skilling to 1 lakh women over a period of almost a year. So these are some examples of the kind of things which are happening. And just one last thing we had done was with the Astra, we had developed some 34 business guides across different kind of job roles. And lastly, there's an initiative I just want to mention is we launched recently a Nirvana Fund, which is really a window for individual philanthropists or small mid-sized companies to do contributions which could go towards funding nano entrepreneurs. So I'm sorry if I've spilled over a bit, but I thought I'd share all this since you are in an environment where there's such interesting initiatives going out. So that's all from me right now. Thanks.
Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts and so many initiatives that are happening as well. I think what you have shared with us will certainly inspire many girls and women to pursue entrepreneurship as a career of choice. So thank you for sharing this with us. My next question is for Pallavi. As the Chief of HR Officer of a big multinational company, which employs nearly 120,000 people in India, what, according to you, can be the ideal role of the private sector in encouraging more women as not just employees, but also within the value chain as entrepreneurs? Over to you, Pallavi. You're on mute, Pallavi. Sorry.
My apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you, everyone, and good evening, and thank you for inviting me for the panel today. Happy International Women's Day to the women who are over here today, and to the men for being inclusive and supporting the women in their journey. So we've already heard, about how we have been journeying in the country, various statistics reports. We all are aware of the fact that some of the global institutions have established that empowering women, and we spoke about it earlier as well, Sunita and Vandana, economically propels growth and prosperity. The global gender gap exists across all major social institutions. Therefore, we all must make an effort to close it. Governments set policies for economies, investments, and influence, and Sunita spoke about that as well. When a systemic change in on-the-ground priorities, attitudes, and practices is needed, however, especially across the full spectrum of industries and functions, for significant impact, the businesses themselves need to be engaged. Our industry has made great strides over the past few years to increase gender diversity and achieve gender equality at all levels. Private sector engagement is also appropriate because of the distinctive capabilities businesses bring to the task. As already remarked, there are some changes that simply must be enacted by businesses when it comes to whether hiring, investment, supply chain management, and other basic economic functions to help build entrepreneurs as well. And here we've all realized, particularly going from 2020 onwards, that technology is a great enabler, and we've all seen the impact of it, as I said, particularly since last year. We can also leverage technology to empower women and improve business outcomes as well. Capgemini, for instance, focuses on multiple fronts to tackle social issues through its partnerships with multiple organizations, NGOs that focus on different issues. Capgemini as an organization is committed to advancement of women with policies and work culture geared and aligned to promote diversity, as we believe this to be the central to creating inclusive, innovative, and creative solutions. So there's a business area that we are looking at. We also try and make our policies, program, and processes gender agnostic to make it all inclusive. We support diversity, we identify diverse employees, job-related, unique skill sets. We provide a fair and sound working environment. We have employee resources groups, or ERGs as we call it, to drive our diversity agenda through grassroots passion and initiatives. And we leverage diversity for innovation and aspiration. All of this, of course, is supported by a lot of the HR practices and procedures that we follow within the organization. Identifying barriers, restrictions to diversity, taking action to remove them, training and continuously educating line and HR managers, communicating the spirit of diversity policies and agenda within the organization are some of our focus. We also establish measurements to monitor our diversity dimensions, how we recognize differences and utilize diversity as a strength. Gender diversity is a critical priority for Capgemini. To ensure we create a sustainable pipeline for the best available talent and increase women participation and representation at senior levels. Our aspiration is to build an environment both internally and externally that embraces differences and enables us to generate new ideas and anticipate market trends and be a leader of leaders. So for instance, we have a WINSPIRE program that provides equal growth opportunities, favorable working conditions for all colleagues, enabling our women colleagues to achieve their career aspiration and organizational milestones. Captivate is a Capgemini career comeback initiative. It supports women professionals to address their experience gap, and we heard some of it as Vandana was speaking as well, and provide a route for talented women back into the workplace. It's imperative to address and fill this gap to prepare women for future leadership roles. We are injecting greater urgency into our efforts to tackle gender imbalances in the workplace, using flexibility as a key differentiator to being a talent magnet to the modern workforce. At Capgemini, we also practice diversity in hiring. So last year we launched a program called Sakhi Drishtikon. So Sakhi Drishtikon is an initiative to train and hire rural women in India from economically weak background with a location mobility challenge. We took the opportunity of remote working to bring these women from rural India into the mainstream workforce. After undergoing training in Capgemini's Cloud and Infrastructure Services Academy, they are selected and hired in Capgemini as platform agnostic full stack engineers. Similarly, we have a Fair Welcome program that helps transitioning from office to maternity leave, helps stay connected with our colleagues. Nearly 90% of women who went on maternity leave last year came back to work owing to the Fair Welcome program. We have another program which is called WITI, which is basically looking at women in tech India. So WITI is a program which provides our women colleagues a platform to showcase and strengthen their skills, develop newer technical competencies, be more intentional about their careers, and learn from their role models. This leads to an increase in employee engagement and retention within the organization, and then it strengthens the leadership pipeline as well. So the initiative is largely to engage and empower women colleagues from the business to have successful careers. We also have women sponsorship programs where basically we assign sponsors to proteges who help and develop and grow women colleagues in their careers by looking at what are the development areas that they would like to focus on along with their supervisors. So we weave inclusion aspects in all communication related to organizational culture, performance management, and much more. We also have inclusion conscious keepers as part of the promotion, nomination, conversions, performance appraisal discussions. Our leadership is committed to promote gender equality, and we invite leadership commitment to advancing women at work through different channels like newsletters, stories, blogs, biannual Inclusion Week celebrations. Being an equal opportunity employer, our policies, initiatives, and culture helps us into not just attracting and retaining more women employees, but also creating entrepreneurs. So our tagline of Get the Future You Want is a testament of the same. So organizations like ours absolutely do help and will help and can help building more women entrepreneurs now and going forward. Thank you, and back to you.
Thanks so much, Pallavi. I mean, it's again fascinating to hear so many initiatives and how not only women can come back to the system, but also how they're also encouraged to the leadership positions within your organization. But as you said, how businesses like you can really promote and support entrepreneurs to come up and support especially women and girls to pursue this forward. Now, I think I'll move on to our last speaker, Sudeshna. At Hamara Grid, you're working to create women entrepreneurs at scale, focused on rural electrification and microgrids. What, according to you, are some of the challenges, but also what are the opportunities for engaging women? Could you share your experiences with us?
Dwarka, I would like to lead. Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dwarka, and a very good evening to all of you. And it's a real honor to be part of this panel. And my sincere thank goes out to the organizers, University of Gujarat, YuWaah, and UNICEF for giving me the opportunity to highlight some of the key works that we have done on DRE-driven entrepreneurship, women-centric entrepreneurship development in Jharkhand and West Bengal. As we all know, like the realization of the 17 SDG goals is not possible without the integration of gender planning, gender concerns, and gender equity. At Hamara Grid, we have installed and commissioned over 300 small pico grids for lighting and mobile solutions in the tribal district of Purulia in West Bengal and in Sundarbans, West Bengal, as well as commissioning over 40 grids, village level mini grids in the tribal district of Gumla in Jharkhand towards powering the entire energy needs of an entire village, spanning from domestic, commercial, productive needs. For us, this rural electrification model in Jharkhand or in West Bengal through pico or mini grids is not an end itself. It's not only about providing that access to quality, reliable, and dependable electricity to the rural consumers and villagers, but it is also a very, very effective platform for engaging with the rural consumers, with the women, with the rural women and the rural folk to create, enhance productive use of energy and to create micro enterprises with a particular focus on women. Our essential focus is making SDG 7 work for SDG 8, which essentially means that access to affordable, clean, reliable energy impacts and paves the way for sustainable and inclusive socioeconomic growth. So we, after having this decade of experience and of managing and operating pico and mini grids with an installed capacity of over 1.5 megawatts spread over West Bengal and Jharkhand, we have recently spread our wings to Southeast Asian countries of Myanmar, of Nepal, and in Africa to provide DRE-based solutions towards DRE-driven women economic development and entrepreneurship growth. So what has been our experiences in Jharkhand, where we have worked with over 40 villages with an installed capacity of 1 megawatt? We have incubated over 65 to 70 women entrepreneurs in our operational villages, spanning different vocations relating to poultry, farming and irrigation, beading, grain milling, rice hulling, etc. We have worked with individual entrepreneurs and their families for this economic development. We have worked with collectives and existing social capital in terms of SDGs and women's group and joint liability groups towards entrepreneurship growth. And we have also intervened at the ecosystem level for creating that kind of an enabling environment for scaling this model from pilots to achieving scale. So in a sense, if I kind of sit back and analyze what has been our approach towards designing this, towards implementing and executing this model, there have been a few key lessons which I'm going to share in this platform. First is that choice and identification of the right technology. As Sunita and Vandana also pointed out, this is very, very key. And what do I mean by choice of appropriate technology? Is that the selection of the technology has to be simple, it has to be user-friendly, and the machine design and the ergonomics has to be such that it's easy for the women entrepreneurs to operate those machines. Second, extremely key, and again, it has been brought out in this forum, and this is oft discussed in the different forums that I have participated in and the webinars, is access to affordable financing and cheap capital, as well as access to markets. These two factors are very, very key for the model to go to scale. Last but not the least, in terms of access, extremely key input and a critical piece is access to skilling, in terms of capacity development of the women entrepreneurs. And it is to be done at 3 levels, as our operational experience points out. One is giving the woman entrepreneur and skilling her on use of the new machine, on the use of the new technology. Second is making her, capacitating her on use, on her own, managing her own business, maintaining her accounts, her finances. And third, very, very key in this element, in this piece also of capacity building, is providing necessary exposure and mobility to the women entrepreneurs so that they can interact and engage with the different local stakeholders towards negotiating business outcomes. But as it is true for our rural electrification model, it is not only about access, but it goes beyond access to impacting livelihoods in a sustainable fashion. The same is true about our DRE-driven entrepreneurship model. It is not only providing access to technology, it's not only providing access to affordable capital, not only about access to skilling and capacity building, and not only access to market and market information. It goes beyond that for the model to reach scale. So from, again, drawing from our operational experiences in Jharkhand, we have seen that there are additional factors that go into helping the model to reach scale. And what are those factors? The strategic factors. One is, it's very, very important to have that kind of a policy, a coherent policy intervention and policy action, and a kind of collaboration between private and public enterprises and partners to impact the entire value chain. It's not about addressing the different nodes of the value chain, but to address the entire value chain in its entirety, right from procurement, production, processing, packaging, marketing, and quality control. This is very, very key. And we should also understand there is a cost to this development. This comes with a particular cost, and the local stakeholders and the responsible stakeholders should also kind of take this cost into consideration, budgetize the cost, and also bear the cost for a very long and a sustainable impact. Second, it's very important to create the local champions of change. I have worked extensively with rural entrepreneurs and rural women in Jharkhand and West Bengal, and from personal experience I have seen, and this is something which I'm really going to focus on, is creating those successful women entrepreneurs at the grassroots. They instill a lot of confidence and a lot of inspiration within the rural communities, and they really inspire other rural women to come forward. They are absolutely champions of change, and they help the model to grow from within. Thirdly, I think another very, very key aspect is to populate a certain geography with a large number of women entrepreneurs. It is very helpful, and it is great to create pilots of excellence, but to take the pilots to scale, you need a certain mass, you need a certain volume, which will attract finances, which will attract technology, which will attract logistics and HR. These are the key inputs for the business to grow and for the model to function at scale. And last but not the least, I would take this opportunity also to highlight the importance of measuring impact in a technical manner. Impact measurement is very, very key, not only for sharing with the community, the positive outcomes, but also, creating those evidences of change and informing policy decisions to frame gender-friendly policies at scale. In conclusion, I would like to kind of highlight that in order to design any DRE mini-grid powered woman entrepreneurship model, it is very, very important and imperative to understand the constraints and the capacities and the context of the ecosystem and the context of the solutions, proposed solutions, and to act upon that. And as Sunita also pointed out, and Vandana, it calls for coherent action between a large number of stakeholders, including local governance structures, government, the local communities, private NGOs, the livelihood missions, and the media, of course, to act in a coherent and act in a connected fashion to make that impact. I end with a line with our mantra of Hamara Grid, that scaling upwards can only take place effectively when you scale down. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sudeshna. It's great to hear such passionate speech, and also the inspiring work that you're really doing on ground. And definitely, I think that mantra is for all of us who want to, be part of that system where we are creating scale, and how we can really do that collaboratively. I think the discussion today has really brought up key insights. It has given me a great pleasure to listen to all of you, Sunita, Vandana, Pallavi, Sudeshna, where we bring in our experiences and thoughts on how we can really reimagine the critical needs of the hour: employment, skilling, participation of women and girls, not only in jobs but also in entrepreneurship. It has been a great opportunity to learn from each one of you. I want to share with you about Generation Unlimited before we close for the day, which was launched as YuWaah in India. It's a name that was chosen by the young people themselves. It's an ambitious multi-stakeholder partnership alliance with the long-term goals to engage 300 million young people as change leaders, equip 200 million with skills they need for the future, including 21st century skills, and finally create pathways for jobs and entrepreneurship, especially for girls and women. YuWaah's strength lies in bringing together the ecosystem and scaling up initiatives that have been functioning in silos, thus increasing the reach and impact. It is an opportunity to come together like today and help each other build a better and sustainable future with and for young people. We have recalibrated our strategy for COVID-19 response and reached more than 20 million young people. From this journey, we have learned that we need to be dynamic and innovative to face the new challenges and old problems, especially in the post-pandemic world, and when it comes to reaching the more vulnerable and marginalized groups and addressing the barriers and challenges, especially girls and women face in India. Another key learning is that we cannot do this alone, and I think all four of you have really pointed that out. We need to share our best practices, but also our failures as learnings, and find opportunities for collaborations by listening to the young people and women. Today, from this panel discussion and partnerships, my belief on working together with private sector, government, community-based models, and young people to find solutions is further strengthened. At UNICEF and YuWaah, we are committed to working on gender equity, learning and skills development, and access to economic opportunities, including jobs and entrepreneurship. I sincerely thank all the viewers, panelists, and GUSEC team for organizing this, and I also congratulate again the Gujarat University for their partnership and collaboration with UNICEF and YuWaah for amplification and promotion of entrepreneurship among young people, especially girls and women. Thank you, and happy International Women's Day again.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank all the dignitaries and speakers for their thought-provoking insights today. I also thank UNICEF and YuWaah Foundation for their assistance in making this event a success. Last but not the least, I thank our wonderful audience for tuning in for our event. We hope that the summit brought you helpful insights. The summit was organized as a part of HerStart, GUSEC's flagship event that recognizes, promotes, and encourages women entrepreneurs. The applications for the same are open until March 28th, and I would encourage all women with ideas of their own to avail support of the same through HerStart. The details of the same can be found at www.herstart.in. If you have any questions, feel free to connect with GUSEC on our social media or drop an email at contact@gusec.edu.in. Thank